the very same day. Call now for your free vein screening at 612-389-0035. That's 612-389-0035 to schedule your consultation.
welcome to Fox 9 All Day. I'm Courtney Godfrey. It's currently 2:07 here in the Twin Cities Metro. Let's jump right into what's coming up on our show today because we've got a lot for you. In about 15 minutes or less than, we're going to talk Mayor Frey, who delivered his first State of the City in his third term. Then after that, at 2:30, we're going to talk to Andrew Dukowitz from Zone Coverage. He's a local Timberwolves reporter, and he's going to talk to us all about Game 1 of the second round of playoff play, and all about Anthony Edwards, his return to the court. Then at 2:45, we'll be talking about Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Day. We'll have a special guest to talk about that. Well, at 3 o'clock, we will be talking about a breeding facility twice broken into by activists that now is releasing hundreds of its dogs to rescues. And we're going to have a reporter on from Milwaukee who's covered this story from the beginning, and he's going to fill us in on what's happening now. And then at 3:30, to round out our show, we're going to have on the Minnesota Teacher of the Year, David Davis from St. Louis Park, a music teacher, and I can't wait to hear all about how he gets his students excited about music in the St. Louis Park School District. All right, let's jump into headlines now. Well, the big news today is Anthony Edwards' return to the court. He made his return last night, leading the Timberwolves to a victory over the San Antonio Spurs. His comeback follows a knee injury he sustained only 9 days ago during the first round of playoff games. The star shooting guard was limited to only 25 minutes of play, and in those 25 minutes, he scored 18 points. Game 2 of the series tips off Wednesday. And last night in St. Paul, 2 people were injured in a shooting and 3 people arrested. Police responded to multiple 911 calls downtown outside the River Center parking garage, arriving to the sound of active gunfire in that area, in multiple areas. Authorities say officers were able to secure 3 different scenes outside Grant's Casino Arena, the River Center, and the Ordway. 2 victims were located suffering from non-life-threatening gunshot wounds, and like I said, 3 were taken into custody as this investigation continues. And big news for Minnesota golf fans. Scottie Scheffler, the world's #1 ranked golfer, will compete in this year's 3M Open. The 4-time major winner will be making his Minnesota debut as a professional, committing to the Minnesota tournament for the first time in its 8 seasons as a PGA stop. A huge get for the organizers as it elevates the event. It runs July 20th through 26th at TPC Twin Cities in Blaine. And then producer Paul Milgate's favorite story of the day, the Wisconsin Fat Bird Week. If NCAA March Madness brackets just don't do it for you, maybe this will. It's called Fat Bird Week, and it's a week-long bracket-style voting competition organized by the Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin. So 8 native birds are on that list. You can see them there, and they're going to compete. These are birds who are, I don't know, what's the appropriate way to say it? A little overweight?
Healthy. Healthy. We're going to call these birds healthy.
Truly. You know what? I like that. These birds are healthy, and they're all hoping to be crowned Wisconsin Fat Bird Week winner. Of course, you can vote now through Friday on wisconsinconservation.org. You know, Paul, I haven't been able to take a good look at these birds, but just at first glance, I would say that beautiful yellow, what is that, a meadowlark?
That is a meadowlark. So they've even got fun names for this Fat Bird Week. Chungus Cardinal is up against Massive Meadowlark. And then we've got Wood Duck with a Dad Bod up against Wappin Widgeon.
You know, what's wrong with a dad bod?
I'm quite happy to own a dad bod.
You're fully committed
I'm
to
fully
the dad
committed.
bod?
I've got a minivan and a dad bod. I'm ready to go.
Wow, the ladies must have a hard time resisting you.
We've also got Ginormous Goldfinch, Bluebird Couple Who Let Themselves Go, which is a very depressing name, Jiggly Junco, and Tubby Tree Swallow. One of them will be Wisconsin's, I believe, inaugural Fat Bird of Fat Bird Week.
You know, I'm really rooting for the couple, Paul, because I just think it's lovely that they've gained weight together. Maybe they broke into somebody's like peanut collection, I don't know. Like, how do they get this big? How do they get this large? He's missing.
Sorry, I'm dealing with a slight technical problem.
I love it when you leave me hanging.
I know.
Like
I'm really
like,
sorry. I know. I was slightly
pregnant
distracted.
pause?
A pregnant pause. What was your question, Courtney?
You know what? Forget it.
Oh no! Don't do this to me. I was trying to get something
Forget
set up
it.
for later on in the show. I promise it's a good surprise.
No, I'm just. How do these? You know, I'm rooting for the couple because I think they're in it together.
And they let
gain
themselves go.
But
Yeah.
I just wonder how these birds got to this point. Like they got into somebody's secret stash of peanut butter, or I don't know, because this is not what the birds in my yard at my bird feeder look like.
I feel like I have a spoiler to share here, and I don't know if this is going to go down well. But I think these birds have just.
Alert.
I think they've just fluffed themselves up for these photos. I don't think that they're actually fat.
Well, here's a theory for you. What if the Wisconsin Conservation overfed these birds on purpose for this competition?
Well, there's a conspiracy theory if I ever did hear one.
I just don't know how else they got so fat.
But I want to just get it. I need to get it on the record right now. Which one are you going for? Because we're going to regroup at the end of next week. Who are you going for here?
You know, it's such a tough call, but I think that I have to go with the Whoppin' Widgeon.
All right, you're locking in Whoppin' Widgeon. Grace, have you got a bird? She's not here.
I'm going to call, Grace is going to go with the Jiggly Junco.
Jiggly Junco for Grace. And I'm going to go with the couple who let themselves go.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, all right. That's a check of our headlines. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back with a whole lot more, including a check of Mayor Frey's State of the City address. We've edited it down for you, compressed it into something that's a little more digestible, as it was a pretty long speech given this morning. And we're going to have that coming up after the break. Fox 9 all day. Well, Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis was delivering his 9th State of the City this morning. It was his first of his third term and his first major speech since Operation Metro Surge came to the Twin Cities area. We're going to take a listen to a condensed version of what Mayor Frey had to say earlier today.
But if we don't get serious, our trajectory will not be. Serious about the work, serious about our priorities, and serious about working together to imagine and achieve the city that we all envision. Because when we lose focus on that vision and our respective responsibilities, even just a little, people ultimately feel it. So today is about getting back on track. It's about getting to work. It's about achieving this vision together and doing it with the seriousness that the people in our city expect. In doing that, there are several truths to recognize. First, we proved that we can endure. We got through an incredibly difficult period, and we did it the way Minneapolis always does. We showed up. Our community safety officers delivered groceries to families afraid to leave their homes. Our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs and city attorneys established strategies so we could fight for our residents and our city in court and win. Our mobile medical unit was out in low-income neighborhoods bringing health care and support to hundreds of residents. Our city provided over $10 million in relief for small businesses and residents. Council members, thank you for your partnership and your work. And we kept doing the daily work of city government, plowing roads, fixing street lights, and responding to fires. This work matters. It says something about who we are. Council members, it says something about who you are. We have different roles, but we lead this city together. But at the same time, endurance is not the goal, it's the starting point. The second truth, our responsibility does not end when the crisis fades. We don't need a new emergency to stay focused. We don't need a new enemy to achieve a common dream. We handled what was in front of us, and now we've all got a job to do. Which brings me to the third and the most important truth. We need to do the basics better, and we need to take that responsibility seriously. For too long, we've allowed ourselves to get pulled away from that focus, not because the issues weren't important, but because we lost discipline around what matters most. We try to do everything, things that aren't always a local government's job, and in the process, we didn't always do the most important things well enough. We spent time debating things that are not the most critical parts of our job. And if you ask people what they want from their city, the answers are usually pretty simple. They want to feel safe walking down their street. They want clean air and safe water. They want to be able to afford their home. They want businesses to succeed, and that's the job. Our job as city government is also to help provide a right to a home. And if you want a stable city, you need affordable homes. That's why programs like Stable Homes, Stable Schools matter. They work. Through this program, we've helped keep more than 7,500 students and their families in their homes. That means fewer disruptions, fewer moves, and more kids showing up to school ready to learn. And we're seeing progress beyond the classroom, too. Right now, the number of unsheltered people in Hennepin County is down significantly compared to previous years. As of this week, 239 people in Hennepin County, not just Minneapolis, are actively working with outreach teams. Those 239 people are now connected, known, and on a path towards stability. That is an 11% reduction from 2025. That is a 20% reduction from 2024, and a much more significant reduction since 2020. That number still needs to come down more, but we're moving in the right direction. Our homeless response team is out every day, connecting with unhoused individuals and working closely with an ongoing partnership with Hennepin County. Thank you, commissioners, who helped move more than 3,400 people from emergency shelter to housing in 2025. Moving in the right direction also means continuing to build across every part of our city and at every level. This past year, we helped build and preserve 890 affordable homes. And we've got nearly 2,000 more in the pipeline that will start to come online this year. You can see that progress in projects like Snelling Yards, bringing 95 homes to Hiawatha on a former storage site. Or at Opportunity Crossing in South Minneapolis, transforming a former Wells Fargo site into 6 stories of affordable housing with green features like solar and rainwater reuse. Minneapolis has indeed become a national leader in affordable housing. We've increased the annual production of deeply affordable housing more than 5 times, from 35 homes a year to 185 a year. That's something to celebrate. It requires partnerships with everybody from our city council, and thank you, to our governor and lieutenant governor. Thank you to our county commissioners. Thank you. But moving forward, we also need to look not just to how much we build, but where we build it. For too long, affordable housing has been concentrated in the same areas, limiting opportunity and reinforcing inequality. If we want real upward mobility, we need to build affordable housing in middle and upper income areas, not just the same places where we've built in the past.
All right, you were just hearing from Mayor Jacob Frey, who is delivering his first State of the City in this 3rd term, his 9th State of the City overall. Obviously, Mayor Jacob Frey has been thrust into the national spotlight since Operation Metro Surge. And this speech did focus a lot on Operation Metro Surge and the impacts that it had on the city, and how Mayor Jacob Frey is proposing to help the recovery from those impacts. Although he does, of course, remain a divisive figure and has recently been at odds with his city council, which is run by a majority that is more progressive than he is. So while he promised to ramp up police force to 800, the city council in their rebuttal talked about why they didn't support that. He also talked about helping small businesses recovering after Operation Metro Surge, and adding more affordable housing. You just heard him talking about that there, adding more affordable housing to every new development, and then also adding affordable housing in more affluent neighborhoods. But we do have a response from the city council, and we want to play some of that now.
How does the council see the state of the city in the wake of these 2 major vetoes that came out last week? Where do you stand on those issues?
The beginning of this year, we spent many of our days standing shoulder to shoulder with our community in the streets, fighting for our values. And as we exit that phase of 2026, we are really leaning into solutions, especially around recovery. And I think the thing that we want more than anything are a partnership in developing solutions with the mayor, not vetoes.
If I can add that, my name is Jamal Osman, Council Vice President of Ward 6. Mayor talked about a lot of things to celebrate in our city, but there's a lot still to do, especially failing giving extension time for tenants or renters for pre-eviction really hurts. It really hurts people that I represent, many of the residents who were facing evictions based on just being an immigrant or staying home from ICE invasion. So that was something that disappointing to see, but there's many things that we can work with the mayor and continue have a conversation. And what I see is a dialogue. We know the community better than anyone else. We represent the community. We bring the policies here, but we want the mayor to meet with us and create that partnership so we can all see a success.
Are those vetoes a reflection of where the relationship is at between the council and the mayor?
Well, the relationship can always grow. I think that our vision, what we're bringing forward is policy that reflect the residents, what they're looking for, but just veto, plain veto, it just damages everyone, in my opinion.
When you hear
All right, you were just hearing from City Council member Jamal Osman. You heard him say just there, they feel like they're proposing issues that they bring forward, issues that the community cares about, and they don't feel like the mayor is supporting that. Obviously, the mayor and the City Council have very much been at odds recently. These City Council members in this press conference following the state of the city, specifically focusing on the eviction moratorium. They've been trying to pass an eviction moratorium to help individuals impacted by Operation Metro Surge and the ICE presence that was in this city for about 2 months. And the mayor has vetoed two times what they've tried to do. When they first tried to do a 30-day moratorium, a 45-day moratorium, a 60-day, my producer just corrected me, a 60-day moratorium. He just recently vetoed a 45-day moratorium. So they are at odds over that. And the city council there, you could hear making a plea for the mayor to come together and find a solution for this eviction moratorium issue. Okay, well, that was the state of the city from Mayor Frey just a few hours ago. And after the break, we are going to talk all things Timberwolves with Andrew Dukowitz from Zone Coverage. He's the guy to talk to when we talk Wolves, and he's going to join us after the break. Welcome back to Fox 9 All Day. We are well into the NBA playoffs, and last night the Minnesota Timberwolves beat the San Antonio Spurs 104-102, a tight game in Game 1 of the Western Conference semifinals. That means that Minnesota takes the lead of the series 1-0 in a best-of-7 series. Anthony Edwards, of course, the biggest story of the game, returning from a knee injury only 9 days after suffering that knee injury. To talk all about it, we bring in Andrew Dukowitz from Zone Coverage. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Of course, always a pleasure. Happy to help out.
Okay, so Andrew, last night, Anthony Edwards was only able to play 25 minutes, but in that 25 minutes, he posted 18 points. Talk to me about the return of the Ant-Man.
Yeah, it was just kind of obnoxious, to be honest. He in his left knee, he has a condition called, patellofemoral pain syndrome. It's commonly known as runner's knee. And essentially what it is it's just inflammation that usually takes a couple months to get recovered from. And the best recovery is to not run or do anything that basketball players do on their knee. And while he made his return from that against the Denver Nuggets, in Game 4, he injured his right knee with a hyperextension of his right knee that resulted in a bone bruise, which Jaden McDaniels had a similar bone bruise and missed about 2.5 weeks, 6 games. Recovering from it, and Ant just kind of decided all he needed was 9. Got cleared by the medical staff, bringing a lot of different comic book heroes to mind of Wolverine type of healing. And I tell you, within about 2 or 3 minutes of him being on the court, he hits a baseline turnaround fadeaway jump shot and goes running off onto defense. And it was like he wasn't hurt at all, which is just... again, I don't know what he's doing for treatment, but if we could all get a little bit of that, I think we'd be happy.
Yeah, and you mentioned Wolverine. His teammates and his manager all refer to him as the Wolverine because he just has this superhuman power of quick recovery. So, Andrew, this was a really tight game. I mean, it was tied at the half. The Spurs were actually ahead after the third quarter, and then it sounds like the fourth quarter was really the pivotal moment for the Timberwolves. Talk to me about how that all played out in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I've kind of joked coming into this series that this is the series for just true basketball fans. There's not going to be a lot of foul baiting. There's not going to be a lot of people flopping around. It's just two teams that play basketball the right way, moving the ball team first with generational superstars on each side. And it's going to be a ton of fun. And that's what Game 1 kind of brought to the table, was just a battle. Even though the Wolves were down Ayo Dosunmu and Ant could only play 25 minutes due to the minutes restriction, they just kind of hung around. And then the fourth quarter happened, and they kind of showed that they've been there before, which the Spurs, this is their first playoff run in quite a few years. And the Wolves just looked like the more experienced team down the stretch, just making second effort plays, having that extra gear to go to, making really timely shots. Anytime the Spurs would get a little bit of momentum, it seemed like one player on the Wolves, whether it was a Mike Conley, an Anthony Edwards, a Julius Randle, would just kind of end the run. And then when it kind of became that last 8 minutes range of the game, the Wolves just pulled away. They got out to a 9-point lead with about 4.5 minutes left, and were able to kind of hold on to that for dear life until the end of the game. And I think if you're a Wolves fan, like, this is a sign of maturity in this team that they really hadn't shown all year.
You know, we talk about this team, and a lot of people are saying they're so well matched because they're both really young teams, and they both have several stars. Talk to me about what you expect to see because these teams are so similar.
Yeah, I wouldn't. The Wolves, they get the notion of being a young team, but there's quite a few old guys on
Mike
there.
Conley, Mike Conley,
a ripe old 38. Rudy Gobert is in his 30s. Slow-mo could probably play. Yeah, these teams do have a really similar kind of cast. The Spurs, you look over at there, they have a generational superstar in Wembanyama who sets the tone defensively and just is doing things on the offensive side that at his size no one's ever seen before. And with the Wolves, they have Anthony Edwards, another guy that does things offensively that just no one's seen. His athleticism, his confidence. When you're looking kind of up and down the teams, both teams really pride themselves on playing defense first. The Wolves obviously anchored by Gobert and Jaden McDaniels. And over on the Spurs side, they have really good defenders up and down the roster, whether it's De'Aaron Fox or Dylan Harper at the guard spots, Keldon Johnson on the wing. I think the biggest similarity is just they play basketball the right way. What I mean by that is it's very team oriented. There's a lot of extra movement. Both teams are very conscious of keeping everybody involved and engaged. And if you're a casual basketball fan that doesn't like to hear whistles all the time or likes to see the flow of the game, you couldn't ask for a better matchup. Really, the biggest difference between them is just the Wolves have kind of been there and done that. They've been in the playoffs the last 4 years. They've had early exits. They've had the 2 Western Conference Finals appearances, and the Spurs are just at the beginning of their journey. So, again, it's just a fun matchup for basketball fans.
Yeah, but pretty cool to see that the Wolves held the Spurs star Victor Wembanyama to only 11 points. So clearly their defense was working last night. Coach Finch said after the game that the team needs to play a smarter brand of offense. What do you think he means by that?
This team has a lot of guys that are supremely confident. Bones Highland being one of them. Anthony Edwards is never lacking for confidence. And there are times with this team that they don't make the right play. They decide to shoot it or take a contested shot when there's still time left on the shot clock. They will go down the court and shoot without making a single pass. And just having covered this team and talked to Finch about it quite a bit over the years, that's stuff that just kind of drives him crazy on the inside. And now that we're in the playoffs, there's just not that room for error anymore. You have to attack the mismatches. You have to be a little bit more conscious of like time and place and situation when you're taking shots. And the Wolves throughout the regular season, I think, struggled with that a lot more than they did during the Denver series. And it did flare up a little bit in that San Antonio game 1, but kind of to your point, their defense was phenomenal, holding the Spurs to 102 points. Wemby being held to just 11 was kind of spectacular considering he played, over 35 minutes. Beggars can't be choosers. I think Finch would like everything to work, but as long as you're getting out of there with a win, I think they're feeling pretty good today.
I would say so. Ant said in the post-game press conference, everybody in the arena is against us. That's the best thing about it. So he seems to like the opposing crowd and their chants and their boos.
Yeah, these guys love playing on the road. Jaden, I've talked to him a couple times over the years, and he's always been pretty honest that he prefers playing on the road where he can quiet a crowd than playing at home where the crowd's behind him. That's not to say that Wolves fans aren't spectacular at Target Center, but it just brings out something extra in guys like Jaden, guys like Ant. This team also is just kind of an underdog team, even though they're back-to-back Western Conference Finals team. It feels weird calling them underdogs, but a lot of guys on this team, they consider themselves underdogs. Rudy Gobert kind of came from nothing and has made a Hall of Fame level career. Ant, for people that haven't read Chris Hines' book behind me, pretty similar story where he comes from very humble beginnings and is against the odds pretty much his whole life. Jaden coming out of Seattle, Io out of Chicago. Like, a lot of the guys on this team just really do have that underdog DNA in them. And when they're on the road and everyone's against them, it allows them to tap into it a little bit more, which might be why we see some of their best performances on the road.
And you know what I love? Like, Ant isn't from here, but he is so loyal to Minnesota. And he was loyal again in that press conference last night. I mean, he loves Minneapolis. He loves our crowd. And just pretty cool to hear him last night, again, just talk about how he'll, I think he said, I'll rep Minnesota every day.
It's wild. I cover the Gophers women, I cover the Lynx, and I cover the Wolves on the beat. And it goes across all three of those programs that there's just something about Minnesota fans, something about the Twin Cities, the state of Minnesota that there's just a different level of bond between the fans and the players, whether it's, role players like Joe Ingles having cult followings online, whether it's people like Ant who see it every time he leaves his house, players on the links that, can't go out in public without being recognized, which is still a little bit of a rarity in the women's basketball space. Minnesota, they treat their basketball players and their professional athletes really well. And I don't think that gets missed from the athlete side of, hey, this fan base treats me like a person. And I think that's a rarity in sports nowadays.
Yeah, and
Which to your point, that's why Ant's sitting here saying, I'll rep them forever.
Yeah. No, it's really great. And I think it just feeds off. I mean, the fans feed off that. He feeds off the fans. So it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship. The Wolves tip off tomorrow night, Wednesday. They're back in San Antonio, right?
Yep, back in San Antonio, another late game for us people that like to go to bed before 10 p.m., but the playoffs ruined our lives a little bit. So we will all be up watching, but 8:30 in San Antonio. They'll be back home Friday and Sunday back at the Target Center. And I do have to shout out Lynx home opener is on Saturday as well. So 3 straight days of awesome basketball here.
That's amazing. We do love the Lynx as well, and we'll be talking about them plenty this season, so maybe we'll have you back pretty soon to talk Lynx ball as well. We really appreciate you, Andrew. We always love having you on the show. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Day. We're going to have a special guest to talk about this day and what it means for Indigenous people across Minnesota. Stay with us. Here on Fox 9 all day. Well, we did let you know off the top of our show about a St. Paul shooting yesterday that injured 2 people. We are learning now that there will be a 4:15 press conference held by St. Paul Police. We'll be streaming it on fox9.com, or at least that's the plan. And we'll also have that on our 5 o'clock news. But again, St. Paul Police are planning on updating the public about a shooting that took place in downtown St. Paul yesterday that resulted in the arrest of 3 individuals as 2 suffered non-life-threatening injuries. In other news, today marks Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Relatives Day. Indigenous women are significantly more likely to experience violence, with homicide being the third leading cause of death for those aged 15 to 24. Governor Walz declared today Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Awareness Day. Here's Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan reading the proclamation.
That we not talk about the statistics and the people that we have lost and those who have gone missing and people who have lost their lives. But we will not be silent. We will not go quietly into the night, because this work, it's required that we raise our voices and we ensure that this does not continue to happen to anyone's family or any individual. So thank you so much for being here today, and I have a proclamation that I would like to read. Whereas Indigenous people continue to experience the highest rates of murder and exploitation per capita in Minnesota's urban, rural, and reservation population, disappearing at alarming rates with very little public visibility or justice. This is a long-term and ongoing crisis impacting Indian country across the United States, and there is no comprehensive estimate for the number of Indigenous people who've been lost to violence since the beginning of colonization. More than 4 in 5 American Indian women have experienced violence in their lifetime, and more than half have experienced sexual violence. Although they make up just 1% of Minnesota's population, Indigenous women and girls account for 10% of the missing females in the state. Indigenous men and Two-Spirit relatives are also overrepresented in missing persons and homicide data. According to a 2020 study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, homicide was in the top 10 leading causes of death in the United States for American Indian males, 1 to 54 years old, and American Indian males had the second highest rate of homicide compared with males in all other racial or ethnic groups. The history of settler colonization and ongoing systemic racism, historical trauma, sexism, and sexual objectification of Indigenous relatives have increased the prevalence and impact of the underlying causes of violence, including poverty, homelessness, housing instability, justice involvement, food insecurity, mental health instability, and substance use disorders for Native Americans compared to non-Native Americans. Minnesota recognizes the sovereignty and role of the 11 sovereign tribal nations that share geography with Minnesota, law enforcement and agencies at local, state, tribal, and federal levels, community-based organizations, and all advocates dedicated to ending this crisis. In 2019, the Minnesota legislature created the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Task Force, and in 2021, Minnesota established the Office for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives, dedicated to ending violence against Indigenous people in the state. In 2023, Minnesota created the Gaige Mikwanadodzewaguwag reward account for information supporting the investigation of cases of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. And while there has been progress being made in addressing this epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous relatives across Minnesota, continued education and action are necessary to understand and address the root causes of violence. And whereas Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Awareness Day encourages all people in Minnesota to stand in solidarity with Indigenous victims, survivors, families, and communities disproportionately impacted by violence, now therefore, I, Tim Walz, Governor of Minnesota, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, May 5th, 2026 as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Awareness Day in the state of Minnesota. And let me just end on this. I want to make sure that as we are in this space and we are lifting up this day and we go through these statistics and the heartbreak, that we also remember that we are resilient, that we are still here, that many of us are not even supposed to exist, and yet we persist. And we persist because of a deep love for one another, our history, and as Siobhan's mom, I am grateful for this community, what we've endured together, but also how we continue to triumph. Chimigwech, thank you.
All right, that was Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan reading the proclamation for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Awareness Day, which was declared today by Governor Tim Walz. All right, joining me to talk about this issue is Guadalupe Lopez, the Director of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office. Guadalupe, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Bonjour, and thank you for having me.
You were at the Capitol today, along with many others. What was that event about, and why was it so important for you guys to have your voices heard?
So it's important to gather as a community to honor the lives and community members that have lost their loved ones or they are still missing. And so it was saying the names that we have collected at the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office was important to this team, but also to the community to make sure we recognize and honor those lives.
The numbers are absolutely stunning. I read that Native women face murder rates more than 10 times the national average. Why? I mean, what is behind these stunning figures and these lives?
So as an Anishinaabe woman, I think when we are talking about colonization, when we are talking about the impacts of jurisdictional issues that impact us as Indigenous people, we don't always live on our reservation lands. We are inner city. We live in rural areas and urban areas. I think that the history of racism and misogyny has impacted our community to the point where we have been dehumanized in certain communities and in certain people's eyes. So it creates a perfect storm when we're having misogyny, when we're having a poverty, when we're talking about domestic violence and sexual violence and sex trafficking, all of these other harms that are being caused by our community create a perfect storm for missing and murdered.
So from what I read, this crisis is driven by high rates of sexual assault, trafficking, domestic abuse, but also a lack of consistent, timely responses from law enforcement. So it sounds like you're dealing with two huge issues here. How do you tackle both sides of this coin?
Well, our office is trying to work very closely with law enforcement. I mean, without them, we couldn't get as far. We are not an investigative office, so we really rely on that law enforcement to open up new maybe cold cases, working with us to make sure that families are taken care of appropriately. So we are the system liaison and a family liaison that can support law enforcement.
Would you call this one of the most devastating issues facing the Indigenous nations?
Yes. I think that it is devastating to our communities when we have called ancestors home way before their time, and it is unjust. And so if it's labeled as an epidemic, then that means that we should be paying attention to it in a different way. We should also be looking at this as, a public health issue. Our community deserves answers and appropriate supports when they have experienced a loved one losing their life to homicide or a missing person case.
We talked about your work with law enforcement. Is there any education or resources in relation to the trafficking and the domestic abuse issues?
So we are one piece of a big puzzle. There is nonprofits who work with law enforcement, but as an office, we do work with law enforcement regarding our reward fund, trying to make sure that is a tool that law enforcement can use to possibly close the loop and to get justice and close cases for families in our community. And so I think that is something that we are always working on. This office is only 4 years old, and so it takes a while to build that stamina. But we have great allies supporting us.
That's wonderful. And you said your office is only 4 years old. It does feel like this issue has only really gotten mainstream attention in recent years. Is this really a grassroots movement?
It started with, concerned moms and aunties and grandmas around kitchen tables. It started from, having to bury our children, or looking for our family. And so this has been an issue that Canada has experienced. I know in the lower parts in the United States on Turtle Island and in Alaska, there has been great documentation of how nobody comes looks for us, or when the lack of justice that we deserve when we are found murdered.
Does this feel like a big day to have the governor declare a day for you?
Yes, of course. Peggy and I are actually are from the same clan, and so in Anishinaabe ways, that means that we are sisters. I'm so proud of her, and I'm glad that she came here and that Governor Walz actually came to write this proclamation to make sure that this was a day and written with awareness.
Well, Guadalupe Lopez, thank you for the work you're doing in the community. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
All right, that was Guadalupe Lopez with Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office. Again, today is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's and Relatives Day, declared by Governor Walz, as Peggy Flanagan read a proclamation this afternoon at the Capitol. Okay, we're going to have more news, sports, and weather coming up after the break. Stay with us. Fox 9 all day. Well, hundreds of dogs from a controversial breeding facility near Madison, Wisconsin, are being removed and placed in shelters across the country today. Since the 1960s, Ridgeland Farms has bred thousands of beagles, specifically for scientific and medical research. But in recent years, they've come under fire. Just in the last several months, animal rights activists have broken into the facility not once, but twice, and it's made national headlines. But it was our colleagues over at Fox 6 in Milwaukee who actually first broke this story. So Brian Polson can tell the story better than I can. Here's his reporting on that.
For the first time in her young life, Ivy can explore the world outside.
Look at your little nose going.
Since she was born last summer, the purebred beagle has had no access to sunlight, no yard to play in. She didn't even have a name beyond the code tattooed inside her right ear.
You, is it 005?
Until the storming of Ridgeland Farms set her free.
We have more people on the way.
Video recorded by activists and made available to news media shows that by the time police got wind of the break-in, the scene had already descended into chaos.
Brace, brace, brace! Back up before I start!
And right in the middle of it was Kate Prang.
You know, even my parents were like, what are you thinking?
She is an associate professor of graphic design at Lakeland University in Sheboygan County. We only recently learned Ridgeland Farms exists.
And then I was like, oh my God, it's like 2 hours from where I live.
For 60 years, the commercial breeder in western Dane County has sold beagles to laboratories, where they are used to test things like the maximum lethal dose of a new drug or the effectiveness of a new vaccine. And while those experiments are controversial, they are also legal. But in early 2025, Dane County Judge Rhonda Lanford found probable cause that Ridgeland had committed crimes of animal cruelty by allowing unlicensed staff to perform surgeries on the dogs without anesthesia. She appointed a special prosecutor from another county to investigate. But instead of filing criminal charges, he cut a deal, allowing Ridgeland and its owners to avoid charges if they close the breeding operation for good by this summer.
If they didn't do anything wrong, they wouldn't be closing in July.
You felt criminal charges were warranted, correct?
Yes, I should mention at the top that they remain innocent until proven guilty.
Speaking at the time on the Fox 6 podcast Open Record, La Crosse County DA Tim Grinke said he had no authority to seize the more than 2,000 dogs still at Ridgeland Farms because the crimes he was tasked with investigating had occurred in the past.
There wasn't an ongoing situation where animals were being tortured, being abused, that we needed to save the animals today.
And if they won't, then ordinary people will.
So animal rights crusader Wayne Shung took matters literally into his own hands.
It is not just our moral duty, it is our legal right to give aid to animals who are in distress.
He publicly advertised plans for a so-called open rescue, and Kate signed up to help.
If I don't do something to help this situation, what kind of person am I?
Even if it meant she might go to jail.
But you knew the risk.
I did.
You knew you could be arrested.
Yes.
Does anyone need an armband?
As volunteers gathered in Madison on March 15th for what they thought was a dress rehearsal, Kate's team had already breached the farm's perimeter fence. They live-streamed their effort to bust open the doors, and for several minutes, those efforts failed.
We just stood there and thought we're never going to get them.
Eventually, Shung grabbed a sledgehammer and smashed through a vent fan, allowing others to climb inside.
It was like a movie scene.
Oh my God. Lisa Castagnazzi was there to help carry the dogs out.
One came out a window, I grabbed it.
One by one, the activists plucked beagles from their cages, slung them over their shoulders, and made the long trek back to the nearest public road.
If I could erase this memory, I would.
The hardest part, Kate says, was leaving the others behind.
Those little eyes just waiting and wanting someone to pick them up and take them out of there.
And it sounds like that haunts you.
It haunts all of us.
She carried one of the dogs to a transport van waiting in the road.
Shut the back!
And then
Please.
Saw a sheriff's deputy removing a cage from the back of that van and tried to stop her.
All I could think about at that moment was save that dog.
Hours later, Dane County Sheriff Calvin Barrett made an announcement.
Off of our information at this point, all of those dogs were recovered.
What he did not yet know is that activists had surrounded a pickup truck.
We were able to kind of stop him, stand in front of his truck.
Go, 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 Alexis.
Allowing just enough room for at least two of the vans
Now's your chance
to get away. Ridgeland Farms declined our request for an on-camera interview for this story, but on the day of the break-in,
we're, certainly disappointed.
Spokesman Jim Newman made a public appeal.
While you may have concerns about dogs being involved in research, I think we can all agree that attacking family farms, going after research labs that are studying cures for cancer, etc., that should be of concern to all of us.
Save the dog!
Dane County deputies initially detained or arrested more than 24 people. 5 spent the night in jail before they were released.
I wish this was more about those dogs than us.
What is wrong with you?
Deputies returned 8 beagles to Ridgeland. 22 others got away, including Ivy, who is still learning to navigate life.
Good job. Come on up.
Outside a cage.
I don't feel like this is done.
Less than a week after his release from jail,
We got a plan to go back to Ridgeland Farms.
Shung published a new plan to break into Ridgeland Farms again. This time he says he wants to send 2,000 people in for the 2,000 dogs still inside. They can't arrest and jail us all, he wrote. Ridgeland calls that plan dangerous and unlawful.
People might not understand. I get that.
Kate sees it through different eyes.
If you have a dog at home, look into the eyes of that dog. Ask yourself what you would do.
Well, the reporter who
The state of our city
Olson from Fox 6 joins us now to talk all about it. Brian, I have so many questions. Oh, apparently we need a little bit of time to get Brian on the line, but I know he is there. I can see him in one of my monitors because I have so many questions after watching this story. Brian, I hear that you're with me now. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So many questions after watching your story, but I think right off the top, I mean, if this business has been in operation since the 1960s, why now are they facing these charges and getting their animals taken away?
Well, I think, for one thing, notice the location. It's a remote farm in western Dane County, Wisconsin, and I think this farm operated there really out of public view. You can't see what's going on inside, and I think it just didn't have attention on it until 2017 when a group of activists, a few of them, went in the middle of the night. Wayne Shung, who you saw in that story, was one of the activists who went in and removed 3 beagles in the middle of the night, then posted it on social media, taking responsibility. It actually took 4 years after that in 2017 before the Dane County DA charged Wayne Shung and 2 others with crimes for breaking into the facility. But Wayne Shung wanted his day in court. He wanted this to go on trial. He thought it was animal rights on trial. And Ridgeland Farms at the last minute pulled the plug and told the DA, we don't want to go forward with this anymore. So they dropped the charges. But Wayne Shung and a group called Dane for Dogs that came about after hearing about the 2017 break-in or rescue, depending on your perspective, they ended up turning the tables by petitioning for a special prosecutor. They asked a judge to appoint a prosecutor to charge Ridgeland Farms with crimes of animal cruelty. And it wasn't until January of 2025 that a judge actually found probable cause that there had been crimes of animal cruelty that took place inside Ridgeland Farms. She appointed a special prosecutor, and it's from that point where this started to get a lot more public attention. That's when I got involved in covering this, was in early 2025, and we've now done well over 30 stories and 6 podcast episodes on this facility and on the bigger picture of animal testing in America ever since then.
Wow, so you truly are an expert at this point. You said in the story that the Ridgeland Farms has been charged with committing crimes of animal cruelty.
They were never charged, but there was probable cause found by a judge that they could have been. The special prosecutor was appointed to investigate. He never did file charges. What he actually did is what led us to where we are right now.
So at this point, do we know if what they're doing is illegal, or is it just gotten a lot of attention thanks to animal rights activists?
It's a great question. Now, animal testing in general is perfectly legal in the United States, though it is controversial, and there's certainly a groundswell of support for movement away from animal testing. What got them in, I guess you could say, trouble with the special prosecutor here was what was going on inside the facility, and that is specifically that you had the lead veterinarian, Rich Van Dommelen, who has since had his license suspended. He was delegating surgeries to non-veterinarians who were doing something called a so-called cherry eye surgery. It's a repair of a very common issue with beagles, and that is a swollen eye. They were having those repaired by people who had no medical training, no veterinary training, no veterinary license. And according to state inspectors, they were doing those surgeries without anesthesia. These were very bloody, painful surgeries. There was no aftercare. And ultimately, the state cited Ridgeland for more than 300 violations based on those surgeries. That was really what formed the premise of the potential criminal charges for animal cruelty. But that's not all activists object to. As you point out, many of them object to things beyond that that are still perfectly legal, which has to do with the very idea of animal experimentation to begin with.
Right, so it's a matter of opinion whether you think that this should be legal or not. If the lead vet had his license revoked, how did they find that out? How did they get in and get proof that that he was performing these surgeries without anesthesia?
Obviously, this is something that had been raised by the activist groups, and they actually had a couple of former employees who testified in court about their own experiences of having participated in some of these surgeries. And after that, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection sent inspectors in, and those inspectors then interviewed employees. It was a surprise inspection. They interviewed employees, many of whom said, yes, I've either participated in and or witnessed these surgeries. They double-checked that with records, which the state found to be inadequate in terms of each of these procedures, but they were able to verify that these procedures had taken place. And that's what formed the basis for the 300 plus violations. But it started with the activists, it started with the former employees testifying in court, and then state inspectors going in and interviewing some of the people who worked there. One of the things that came out during those interviews and that formed part of the basis of the license suspension of Dr. Van Domelen was they weren't just doing cherry eye surgeries. Some of them were apparently doing dental extractions. People who were not veterinarians were performing those as well, at least according to the facts that were presented by the state investigators. So he is still suspended. Dr. Van Domelen has not had his license revoked. It is still an ongoing case, but it is currently suspended. While he's able to operate the facility as the facility manager, another veterinarian actually has to serve as the lead vet and take care of all of the veterinary procedures that require a license.
Wow. So to the best of your knowledge, these surgeries maybe continue and testing continues at Ridgeland Farms?
Yeah, Ridgeland Farms does do some in-house experimentation, though that's a small part of its business right now. Mostly what it does is it breeds thousands of beagles every year to sell to research laboratories, universities, private contract laboratories, those that work for the pharmaceutical industry. So the biggest part of its business has been selling dogs to people who do the experiments. And in some cases, those experiments are very painful experiments. We know, for instance, the University of Missouri, my alma mater in journalism school, is involved in tick experiments on dogs that are categorized under USDA categories D and E, which are the two highest levels of pain and distress that animals experience during testing. Category E means it is pain and distress that is not treated with any sort of anesthesia or analgesics to reduce the pain. So they're still doing that kind of work. That's most of what Ridgeland has done. But due to a settlement with the special prosecutor in October of last year, that part of their business is winding down. The special prosecutor said, I'm not going to charge you with crimes, but instead you agree to give up your state breeding and dog selling license by July 1st of 2026. After July 1st of this year, Ridgeland will only be allowed to breed dogs in-house for use on in-house experiments, which again is a small part of their business right now. That will probably continue. What won't continue is the massive breeding operation for selling to others.
Okay, so answer me this. In your story, we saw sheriff's deputies actually removing the dogs from the activists. Can you explain? I mean, I think you've explained it to us that they had, you know, technically they haven't committed they haven't been charged with a crime, but it was a little stunning to see to hear all these horrible allegations, and then to see the deputies actually trying to take the dogs back and put them back in the facility. Why were the deputies trying to give Ridgeland Farms the dogs back?
If you ask the sheriff's department why, it's because that is property that belongs to Ridgeland Farms. That property had been taken, in their view, stolen from Ridgeland Farms, and they were just recovering the property and giving it back to the owner. If you ask the activists, it wasn't property. These are sentient beings who are in distress, who were in trouble, who were being harmed, and they were there to rescue them. Now, that whole determination, was this a legal rescue under the law, which you might think sounds like a stretch, but it's certainly the case that Wayne Chung and others are trying to make, or was this straight up theft from a facility? Certainly that's the case Ridgeland Farms makes. That's why the Sheriff's Department did that. And in my story that you just saw, what we didn't get up to, that story aired before what happened on April 18th, which was that second open rescue attempt, or break-in attempt, depending on your perspective. And they brought more than 1,000 activists to Ridgeland Farms on April 18th with an intent to go in and get the rest of the dogs. But they had advertised it in advance again, and this time sheriff's deputies and actually law enforcement officers from 17 different agencies were on site that day to repel the activists, keep them from getting inside. They used tear gas and rubber bullets and pepper spray, and the activists did not get in. Many of them got hurt, and none got any dogs out. But what they did accomplish was they got more attention, more national attention. And it was that attention that actually got the attention or the ears of some rescue groups out in Washington, D.C. and Florida that are ultimately the ones that came in and paid to get 1,500 of these dogs out. And those are the ones that are going to be coming to Minnesota.
Okay, so you just touched on it there, but how do we get from this point of the sheriff's deputies actually returning the dogs because they're stolen property to now 1,500 dogs being taken from the facility and put into rescue organizations?
So while activists tried to go in to take them, they say rescue them. Ridgeland says steal them. These rescue groups, and two of them, it's Big Dog Ranch Rescue in Florida. In fact, it's one that on the board of Big Dog Ranch Rescue is President Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump. She's been very vocal about the Ridgeland dogs and wanting to see them released. They're located just 15 miles west of Mar-a-Lago. They came in along with another group called Center for a Humane Economy, who is headed by Wayne Pacelli. He's the former CEO of the Humane Society of the United States for a very long time and a longtime animal rights and animal welfare activist. They came together with the money and started negotiating with Ridgeland Farms and saying, instead of having activists come in and storm your facility and take them, let us buy them. Let us buy the dogs from you. You're already, your days are numbered as a breeding for sale institution. So let's give you some value and we can save these dogs. That was what they went in to do. They wanted to get all 2,000. We think there's roughly 2,000 to 2,100 dogs that were at Ridgeland. The negotiations, I'm told, were tense. They were touch and go. It didn't look like it was going to happen at certain times. Ultimately, they were able to secure a deal for 1,500 of the dogs, not the full 2,000 or 2,100. And that does leave questions about the dogs that will remain. And certainly we're still trying to figure out, what does that mean? We know the rescue groups want to buy more. Right now they're saying Ridgeland has said, let's get through these 1,500 and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay, so they've got about 500-600 dogs left in that in that breeding facility. Can the company remain operational? Do they plan to remain operational with only 500 and 600 dogs left?
Every indication they've given is they do plan to stay in business past July 1st, although we have a couple of months to find out what's really going to happen. Ridgeland has been pretty tight-lipped about a lot of this. I've asked them for interviews countless times in the last year and 2 months. I've only had two very brief interviews, one with an attorney outside a regulatory meeting as I captured him on his way out, and the lead veterinarian snuck out the back door. And one other time you saw in that story a spokesperson for Ridgeland Farms who happened to be at the farm the day of that March 15th operation where they went in and got 22 beagles. Other than that, Ridgeland hasn't really said much. So we don't know for certain, but we do know that when they lose their state license in July, they can't breed for sale, but they can still operate under their Class R research license, which is a USDA federal research license. Essentially, at that point, they become the science lab. Instead of the breeders selling the dogs, they strictly become the ones who are doing research on the dogs. Whether or not they will be able to do that on a large scale, do they have the business contacts for that, remains to be seen. And so we don't know if the 500 or 600 dogs left will be just moved under the Class R license. As of the most recent USDA inspection, there were only 156 dogs at Ridgeland that were considered Class R research dogs. The rest were considered part of the breeding facility license. So we'll have to see what happens July 1st. There's still more to come on that.
And it's the breeding facility license that they've lost.
That's the one that they will have to give up on July 1st. If they don't voluntarily surrender at July 1st, the special prosecutor has said he can then revive his criminal investigation and potentially charge Ridgeland with crimes.
Okay, and you said Ridgeland Farms has only gone on the record on camera outside of the facility that day of the activist broke in?
They've gone on the record, but all through statements and emails, and as opposed to interviews where we can ask follow-up questions, where we can have a conversation. They have sent carefully prepared statements, 1 or 2 paragraphs at a time, or sent press releases. But largely the communication has been that route rather than doing interviews. And as I said, I've counted at least 36 stories on Ridgeland Farms and or animal testing and the future of animal testing in America in just the last 14 months. And out of all of that, I've gotten 2 very brief on-camera interviews that were on the spot.
Okay, so let's talk about the future of testing in America. Has this story led to any proposals for change in the animal testing world?
I think really what you're seeing right now, especially as the 1,500 dogs are released, and we're seeing stories like you're doing and stories that are happening. I was talking to WFLD in Chicago yesterday because they're getting some of these dogs. We know that Alexandra Paul, former Baywatch actress, was one of the activists who went in on March 15th and then got arrested after carrying a dog out. That got a lot of attention. And because of all of that attention, there is attention raised on why are we as Americans testing on beagles to begin with, and should we be? And we know that in Washington, D.C. right now, the Food and Drug Administration and National Institutes of Health have both given at least lip service to the fact that they want to move away from animal testing. They are beginning to recognize new methods that are alternatives to animal testing in the drug approval process. Things like neural organoids or laboratory organoids, obviously AI is a big part of this, computational models, organs on a chip. There are a lot of other technologies that can ultimately replace animal testing. It depends when you ask, who you ask, whether or not those models are ready to replace animal testing. Some say they absolutely are. They just need money. Others say they're going to take more years to develop. But we know that at the federal level, there is a push to get away from animal testing. And actually, the director of NIH has recently said in his own podcast, Jay Bhattacharya said that they want to end testing on dogs and cats, and they are moving away from that. I know they've received some criticism from other groups like White Coat Waste Project, who've said they're saying they want to move away from it, but they're still funding experiments that involve dogs, including some that involve Ridgeland dogs. So this is a process. It's probably going to take time, but it does feel like the bigger picture here is, do Americans want experiments to be done on beagles, on cats, on the animals that we consider parts of our family, or do they want to see us move away from that and move toward new technologies?
And the company would say that these are part of cancer research. I mean, talk to me about what they argue, why these animals need to be bred and why they need to be tested.
Yeah, they say this, the research they are doing benefits you. It benefits your family. It allows us, maybe the dogs have to be sacrificed along the way. Some do in part of these experiments, but it's ultimately to protect humans instead of having drugs tried out on humans that are at doses that are not safe, things like that. The argument against that from others, from activists and those who oppose animal testing would say animal models are not very successful at predicting whether a drug is going to work in humans. In fact, 90% of the drugs, it's a number they often cite, that are approved through animal testing and make it to human trials are not approved ultimately as drugs on the market. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they worked in animals and failed in humans. What it means is they might have failed for other reasons other than that the animal testing was inadequate. But it is accurate to say that about only one animal test that's successful out of 10 leads to a human drug. So some are saying these new methods are much more accurate, they're going to be much more reliable, they're going to cost less money, and they won't result in the sacrifice of sentient beings along the way. Again, Ridgeland and others would say these beings have to be sacrificed right now because it's for the benefit of you, me, and all the other humans that take these medicines.
Wow, Brian Polson, investigative reporter with Fox 6 out of Milwaukee. Absolutely incredible journalistic work here. Thank you so much for joining us on this show. You're so knowledgeable about this. You can tell that you are just immersed in this story, so thank you.
My wife would probably say I talk about dogs too much lately, but then again, she saw the beagles getting out and said, "Can we have one?" I mean,
Right.
that's the thing. I got to say, the other day when the beagles were released, that was after all of this reporting and all of this background. That was a moment. That was quite a moment to see.
So, did you say yes to your wife or what?
I don't think journalistically that would be the wisest thing for me to do, but I will say it was, you could see on the faces of the rescuers and shelter workers and volunteers how important this was for them and how meaningful it was for them. There were a lot of tears shed on Friday.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, thank you, Brian Polson from Fox 6 in Milwaukee. You guys are doing wonderful work over there, and we sure appreciate you making the time to talk to us today.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, we're going to have more news, sports, and weather after the break. Stay with us. right. Thanks for joining us here. Paul, I am getting some commercial in my ear, so if you can just cut that, that'd be great. But welcome to Fox 9 All Day. I'm Courtney Godfrey. David Davis was named the 2026 Minnesota Teacher of the Year by Education Minnesota, and he joins us now. David, congratulations, first of all. You teach instrumental and general music to grades K through 5 at Park Spanish Immersion Elementary in St. Louis Park Public Schools. And you had a parent nominate you. Is that how this worked?
Yeah, she is a parent of students who are adults now, but she loved my school community, and she's also a musician herself. So when she came to the school asking, hey, can I be a volunteer? My principal said, oh, you need to meet David. And she was an amazing volunteer. She helped out so much, and it was so tragic when she died unexpectedly a couple months ago. And
You
I
couldn't
didn't
even confirm if she nominated you.
Yeah, I didn't know until her husband came up to me yesterday and said, yes, I saw the letter, it was her.
Wow. So you are the 62nd recipient of this award and only the second from St. Louis Park. Does it feel like an honor? I mean, this does feel pretty unique.
It's so much of an honor. Like, it feels like one of those dreamlike things in life where, yeah, it's like I know it happened, but it still feels like a fuzzy dream. I've only had that 2 other times, my wedding and when I got to meet President Obama. So this is like, it happened, but it's hard to remember, so.
How long have you been teaching?
I'm in my 16th year, 5th year at the school I'm at right now.
Yeah, so you were in Minnetonka before this.
Correct.
Obviously, you're a musician. And you went the teaching route. You have quite the, I mean, you have a master's degree. I mean, just incredible resume. But you chose teaching. Why was it that you wanted to talk with children, teach children your love of music?
So originally I didn't want to be a teacher. I got my bachelor's in saxophone performance, and back then I said, I don't want to be a teacher, I want to be a professional saxophonist. In the music world, there's kind of this stereotypical thing where only the people that aren't good enough at their instruments become teachers, and I didn't want that. But it was actually a teacher in my own life that put me on a new path. He said, you know, even as a professional saxophonist, you're going to have to give lessons, so you should probably take a pedagogy class. And that class blew my mind, made me fall in love with teaching, and it just went on from there.
Do you ever have interactions with students where you just go, you know what, yeah, this is why I'm doing this?
Yeah, all the time. And I have to say, what it usually is I invite my students up to be co-teachers with me, and I tell them, hey, I'm the lead learner, like I don't know everything about music, so can you come up and help teach with me, and like, what's a favorite song you have? And when I see them light up, when it's their inherent brilliance up front and they see that they're also teaching me, like that's the part that's the most fulfilling, the most purposeful, is like knowing that, oh, I got to be a part of that student's brilliance, and like they realize that my brilliance was shown in class.
So you've actually received national recognition for music education and innovation. Your honors include Grammy Music Educator Awards semifinalist.
Top 25 in the nation, yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, so you're among Grammy greats, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't win a Grammy,
Yeah.
but I was top 25 as a semifinalist.
But
yeah.
that is still quite the honor. Give a Note Foundation Music Education Innovator Award, Music for All Elementary Excellence Award, Yamaha 40 Under 40 recognition. So you, I mean, you truly are considered very special to our young people here in Minnesota, and you're being honored for that. I know a lot of teachers don't usually get the recognition that they deserve. So that must add to it for you.
Yeah, and I would say it feels especially meaningful being a teacher of the arts, especially at a time when sometimes schools are cutting the arts.
Talk to me about that, because, you know, I know in the school, you know, I grew up in California, but music education was so important, arts, and then as I got older and we saw classes being cut, we saw programs being cut because of funding, and I know that that's happening nationwide, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way I think of it is like the world, excuse me, the world desperately needs more community, more collaboration, more compassion, more student creativity. And what subject is uniquely positioned for all those? Like, I feel like music, you can create songs together, you can share your self-expression, you can explore things and just be creative. So if we actually want to develop those skills that frankly work in many industries, like people want innovative, creative people, why would we cut something like music that is teaching all those things?
What about kids that come into your classroom and say, you know, they struggle in other courses, you know, they haven't found their passion, and in music they find an outlet, and sometimes maybe these students even fight it at first. How do you help them along?
And when you say fight it, do you mean fight like school?
No, just, yeah, like, you know, they don't want to cooperate, you know, they maybe have struggled in the school setting for a long time, and music is a special outlet for them. How do you hold their hand and walk them through that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I do see a lot of students who just inherently love music. I think our brains are wired for music.
Yeah.
Music existed even before the written word. So if I can create a space that is inclusive and welcoming of all genres, of all cultures, I think a lot of students find that to be a safe space.
The research shows that music unlocks a part of the brain and helps with every aspect of learning, with science, math, technology. You know, a lot of very smart professionals even sit at their desk listening, you know, to classical music while they're working because it just unlocks something in their brain. Do the other teachers at your school, do you guys work together? I mean, do they recognize that?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question, because one of the reasons I love Park Spanish Immersion is the collaboration between my colleagues. I want to call out Kim Weaver, who is a special friend and colleague who she and I collaborate like 50-50 on so many projects. The first grade team at my school we just had a drumming collaboration because they believe, yeah, music and language, and I'm at a Spanish immersion school, so Spanish and the way our brains, the neuroscience of it all, like, yeah, we should be doing things together all the time. Rather than, in my lived experience, the status quo tends to be, let's silo everything, and we don't do music unless they go to music class. And to me, that, like, it's a missed opportunity.
How do you tie in the Spanish immersion into your music class?
So like I was saying before, it's that neuroscience of how our brain learns language and music, and it's so tightly wound together that, yeah, it's when I get to collaborate with my Spanish-speaking colleagues and do activities where how can we put like phonemes and phonics and orthographic mapping into music and Spanish at the same time, and it just makes both the language and the music learning more fun.
Now, I mean, you were originally a musician and went into teaching. Was there a teacher who was especially special to you that influenced you to go into teaching?
Yeah, I shared that story of the teacher that said, you know, you're going to have to teach lessons too. You should probably take a pedagogy course. That man was Steve Jordheim, my saxophone professor in college. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have gone down the path of teaching at all.
That's amazing. When you, I mean, getting this honor, how did you find out?
Like the nomination.
Did they just call you up one day and say, hey, you're Teacher of the Year? I mean, like the biggest honor you can get as a teacher.
Yeah, it's been quite a whirlwind because I just found out on Sunday there was a big banquet in St. Paul, and there was.
So you knew you were a finalist?
I knew I was a finalist about a month ago. There were 10 of us, and amazing colleagues, the other 9 finalists. I'm so honored to have met them, and we're still texting and how can we collaborate together, and oh, if you need some advice on science or special education, I'm here for you, because we all kind of have our unique superpowers. But yeah, we were all at that table, and Linda, last year's Teacher of the Year, said, and the Teacher of the Year for 2026, and we're all like, whose name?
So do you get any special, like, you know, a special prize for you, maybe for your students, for your school, or just the title and the honor?
Yeah, I think you're probably asking about like a trophy or something, but where my mind went was the special prize is knowing that this honor also uplifts my students, because I mentioned before they're co-teachers. So by naming me, they were also actually naming my students as Teachers of the Years because they teach alongside me. And
how have they reacted? I mean, you found out on Sunday, you've been back, you've only had I guess 2 days of school now. We maybe pulled you out a little early today. How have they reacted to the news?
Yeah, I would think like a combination of a rock concert with a kindergartner's birthday party. If you can imagine that, that's the kind of excitement I saw.
And I would bet that the school is planning some kind of special celebration for you. I don't have any inside track on that, but
yeah, I think it was supposed to be a surprise, but I heard there might be something tomorrow. So.
That's amazing. With kindergartner, I am a mom to a kindergartner who loves music, but it is hard to keep kids that small focused, and you work with kids from kindergarten through 5th grade. How do you keep those little ones focused and engaged?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Let me tell you about a project I developed, because I wrote my whole curriculum for all 6th grade levels. So in kindergarten, I call it Kinder Connect. I reach out to every family, give me a song that your child finds really important or meaningful. I develop a little 5 to 10 minute mini lesson on each one, because I believe you can teach music through any genre and any type of song. And then when it's their turn, they get to come up and be the co-teacher with me, and I call them teacher so-and-so, and oh, can you call on someone raising their hand, and oh, can you give the quiet signal, and then they teach about their song, and they help me lead the activity. And it's just, they light up when they know that, like, oh, like everyone in class cares about the song that I care about and the culture I'm coming from, and it's part of my identity. And I make very clear that I don't know everything about music, and you are teaching me too. I never knew that about your song.
So you're empowering them to be young leaders.
Yeah, and the behavior issues that some students deal with, that is almost non-existent when I'm doing a project like that, because the student up front is so engaged because they're teaching, and the students in class are so engaged because it's their peer teaching.
Do you ever, this is a silly question maybe, but do you ever get bored teaching young kids? Because they're just starting out and you're a professional. Does it ever bore you teaching like simple notes and simple music?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that question. So the short answer is no. It's never.
I figured it was no.
Never a dull day, especially with elementary students. But some people assume that it's really simple, like Twinkle Twinkle, Hot Cross Buns. Because I'm making my classroom intentionally more aligned with what you might call the real world of music. In my classroom, we have groove boxes, which are electronic instruments. We have guitars, electronic guitars. We have African instruments. And they are performing music that is like rock music, rap music. We have a local rapper come in and teach them rap, jazz. Like, there's so many genres that no, I don't think it's ever dull music. It's really exciting music.
Wow, just incredible. Anything else you want to say about this wonderful honor that has been bestowed on you?
About the honor, I think I would say that I'm very grateful for this, and I want to use this uplifting as an opportunity to help make systemic change. I'm all about innovation in the field, and I just see a lot of opportunities for us to, as a state, or even the nation, make music education more inclusive and more impactful for more students.
Well, and I think that you're a great example of why music in our schools should not be cut. So thank you for being a great example for that. It really does open up a part of the brain for these kids that just you can't understand until you look at the research and you see what it does.
Yeah, if any districts are thinking about cutting music, I would ask them to come talk with me first.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe you should go lobby at the state legislature. I think that
might happen.
That might be the next move. Okay, David Davis from St. Louis Park Public Schools. He just won the 2026 Minnesota Teacher of the Year. What an honor, and thank you so much for joining us. I so appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with a check of your weather. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to Fox 9 All Day. I'm Courtney Godfrey. Thanks for joining us here this afternoon. We're going to take a quick check of the headlines. Of course, one of the biggest stories today is Anthony Edwards' return to the court, leading the Timberwolves to a victory over the San Antonio Spurs last night. His comeback, of course, follows a knee injury only 9 days ago, sustained in the first round of playoff games. The star shooting guard was limited to only 25 minutes of play, but he used those 25 minutes to score a whopping 18 points. Game 2 of that series tips off tomorrow. And in St. Paul, 2 people are injured after a shooting downtown. Police responded to multiple 911 calls just outside the River Center parking ramp. And when they arrived, they arrived to the sound of active gunfire in multiple locations. Authorities say officers were able to secure 3 different scenes outside Grand Casino Arena, where the Wild play, of course, the River Center, and the Ordway, so a very busy part of downtown. Again, 2 people were injured, 3 people were arrested, and in just about a half hour, the St. Paul police are expected to address the public and update everyone on that shooting. All right, big news for Minnesota golf fans. Scottie Scheffler, the world's #1 professional golfer, will compete in this year's 3M Open. The 4-time major winner will make his Minnesota professional debut, committing to the Minnesota tournament for the first time in its 8 seasons as a PGA Tour stop. It's a huge get for this event, which runs July 20th to 26th at TPC Twin Cities in Blaine. And if the NCAA March Madness brackets just weren't your thing, you might be able to get on board with this. It's called Fat Bird Week, and it's a week-long bracket-style voting competition organized by the Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin. 8 native birds who are on the overweight side will go head-to-head in hopes of being crowned the Wisconsin Fat Bird Week winner. You can vote now through Friday at wisconsinconservation.org. The winner will be announced on Monday. Okay, well, that's a quick check of our headlines. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more after this. It's currently 3:51 here in the Twin Cities Metro and 51 degrees. The temperatures have certainly dropped, but it looks like it's going to be beautiful for our Mother's Day weekend. Erica Mrazek joins me now. And Erica, I mean, man, it is chilly out there today.
It is chilly. I wore my winter coat this morning. But it was sunny, so at least it was bright, even though it was freezing this morning.
Yeah, a bit windy.
Yeah, a little breezy too, and yesterday as well. So that wind got those gusty wind are definitely around to start the work week. But yeah, at the moment, some cloudier skies. The morning started off nice and bright and blue, but now clouds are starting to build into the afternoon, into the evening, but they are going to clear out again tonight. But notice the cloud coverage over our state and then an area of high pressure keeping us quiet. At the moment, passing clouds, winds from the north and the west, and no precipitation across the region. So it is a dry Tuesday, but a cold Tuesday. The high temperature so far 52, and normally this time of year it's about 65. So it is way colder than what your start of May usually feels like. And then the morning was quite a chilly one too at 37. A typical low is 46. And then we're going to see some more cold temperatures for the overnight tonight into tomorrow morning, as well as the next few overnights for the midweek before a warm up later this week. So more May-like temperatures are ahead, but it was definitely a cold start yesterday, chilly today, and cold still tomorrow. At the moment, temperatures are in the 30s to the 50s. And the metro, it's about 51 degrees. Up north, temperatures are in the 30s. And then down south, that's where you start to get more 50s. So it's really a gradient depending on what part of the state you're in. And then also we do have those cloudy skies. So it'd be nice if it was sunny because that would just make it feel more comfortable. But we'll work with what we have. So over White Bear Lake right now, a little bit gloomy, dry though. Current temperatures 51 and the wind is pretty light right now, but a gentle breeze currently at about 16 miles per hour from the west-northwest. And then for the rest of the week, tomorrow going to be really similar to today's forecast. So expect more of the same. Going to be a sunnier start, cloudier afternoon. Temperatures only going to reach the 50s again for the highs. So another cold one. And then the morning also watch out for some frost. Maybe cover those plants and bring them inside. Or cover them up outside. And then for the rest of the week, warmer temperatures, 60s by towards the end of the work week. And then the weekend should be pretty nice, especially for Mother's Day. Mix of sun and clouds each and every day. Chances for rain are very low for the next few days. I don't think we're going to see rain until there's just a very small chance late Saturday, and then a better but still small chance on Tuesday. So it's a really quiet pattern. At the moment, cold, but temperatures will be warming up later. So that's what's in store for about the next 7 days.
Yeah, you know, it's rough for us parents right now in the spring sports because like I was at T-ball last night just freezing my butt off. And you know, you're having to bring all the kids with and they got to bundle up and it's like, man, I'm done with this. And here we are sitting outside at a freezing cold ballpark.
Yeah, it's giving fall football weather, which I feel like at the baseball park isn't as nice.
Yeah.
You need like a warm hot chocolate to keep your hands warm and stuff, or a tea.
Yeah.
When you're sitting there watching.
Yeah. Well, my 3-year-old would love that, a warm hot chocolate, please. That would make her day. So now that you've suggested it, I don't know, maybe we have to sugar them up. That's the trick.
Yeah, tonight or tomorrow. Do
All right,
that.
Great. And we love that warm Mother's Day forecast. Thanks so much, Erica. We sure appreciate you joining us.
Totally.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with a quick check of what's going viral today. Stay with us. here on Fox 9 all day. We are watching a couple things that are set to start here in the 4 o'clock hour. First off, we've got Representative Ilhan Omar and several officials from the state of Minnesota, legislators and officials with Hennepin Healthcare, holding a press conference about the future of that hospital and making a final push for the state to support funding to save that hospital. We are also awaiting, as you can see in that upper box, a press conference from St. Paul Police, and they will be updating us on a shooting that took place, injuring 2 downtown yesterday evening. Well, let's have a little bit of fun before we switch back to the serious stuff. Last night was a big night in entertainment news. If you love fashion, if you love celebrities, you were on your couch watching the red carpet for the Met Gala. I know that's where Paul was, right? Paul was just sitting on his couch eating popcorn, judging all the looks, right?
Yeah, I wasn't maybe watching on my couch, but I was checking it out on Instagram. I wanted to see what people were up to and what they were wearing. Were there any outfits in particular that you saw that caught your eye?
Well, I mean, I think Beyonce in the skeleton was really impressive.
Yeah.
Rihanna, I didn't love Rihanna's outfit. I just didn't get it.
Yeah,
but
Anna Wintour saying that Rihanna is she went on the record yesterday saying Rihanna is the only person that's allowed to arrive late to the Met Gala.
She was. Her and A$AP Rocky were late. Come on. But she is an icon, so they just let it happen,
Yeah,
I guess. And then what about Heidi Klum, who was dressed up like a statue? I mean, she was in full true costume.
Yeah, so Heidi Klum over the last couple of years has become very well known for her Halloween outfits. She really took this one quite literally.
Yes. Well,
fashion
there
is
were
art was the
right,
theme
and like
of the Met
it was
Gala.
like 2 kind of themes, right? It's like costume art, fashion is art. And she was not the only one who dressed up like a statue. There were several celebrities who dressed up like famous statues. In fact, I heard that the Jenner girls, Kylie, what's the other one's name?
Kendall?
Thank you.
Is it Kendall? Yeah.
Yeah,
Kendall.
Kendall and Kylie, they all start with a K.
Yeah, they all do. You'll be forgiven for not knowing.
I heard that they were modeling statues, but their costumes were really interesting because, like Kylie was wearing, she basically it was appearing that it was an unzipped dress, that it was an undone dress, and that the top part was nude. Of course, it wasn't, but it's art. Fashion is art.
Fashion is art, and speaking of the Jenners, there is one thing that is worth noting. Who wasn't at the Met Gala?
That's right.
That was the big thing. So.
That's right. Kylie Jenner's boyfriend and famous actor Timothy Chalamet was not at the Met Gala because he is a loyal Knicks fan, and of course it's the NBA playoffs. He wasn't missing this game for anything. So he was at the Knicks game, and we do a video of that, but we're going to skip that because I'm hearing that we are going to take it. Here is video of Timothy Chalamet on the big screen. He is sitting courtside, I believe, at the Knicks game last night. Meanwhile, his girlfriend was uptown at the Met Gala. But no, not Timothy. Not Timothy. He'd rather take in a basketball game. You know, my big question here, Paul, is does a couple like this, do they use Google Calendar to work out which events they're going to, which events they go to together? I mean, are they like a real couple, like my husband and I, using Google Calendar? Shared calendar?
I mean, you'd hope that they were on top of who's going to be at which different event, and it wasn't an awkward thing last night when she's like, but babe, we've got the Met Gala, and he's like, but I've got tickets to the Knicks. Sorry. But as you did mention, Ilhan Omar has actually taken to the podium, so we're actually going to take you right out to that now to hear some discussions around everything involving HCMC. I just bring up this audio and take you out there now.
Children were born. So I'm not just speaking as a member of Congress. I'm speaking as a mother who has experienced the care and the compassion that this institution provides firsthand. This hospital is a lifeline, not just for Hennepin County, but for Minnesotans across the entire state. HCMC is a level 1 adult and pediatric trauma center. 40% of its trauma and burn patients come from outside the county. Last year alone, it accepted transfers from 109 facilities across Minnesota and handled nearly 100,000 emergency visits. If Hennepin Healthcare cannot continue to serve at this level, the ripple effects will be devastating. Other systems simply do not have the capacity to absorb that value, which leaves lives at risk. Minnesota cannot afford to lose its safety net hospital. And I've always believed healthcare is a human right. That's why I've supported efforts like Medicare for All, because everyone deserves access to care. I said it then, and I will say it now. When you cut care, you put lives at risk. And today we are seeing those consequences unfold in real time. Hospitals are struggling, providers are stretched thin, and one of our most critical institutions is at risk. Let me be clear. The state and county did not create this crisis, but right now they are the only ones that can help fix it. This moment matters because even though we couldn't stop this at a federal level, we still have a chance to act. So I urge our state and county partners to step up. Stand with our community, stand with our providers. Do what we fought to do in Congress. Protect this hospital and the people who depend on it before it is too late. Next, I would like to introduce my dear friend, Representative Esther Agbaje.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar for being here with us today. My name is Esther Agbaje, and I represent House District 59B, which covers the vibrant communities of the north side of Minneapolis and parts of downtown and St. Anthony, Maine. I am also one of the lead co-authors of a bipartisan ballpark tax bill to extend and increase the current sales tax in Hennepin County to support the operating and capital needs for Hennepin County Medical Center. In that bill, I am also advocating for a task force dedicated to creating a funding stream that ensures the success of HCMC for generations to come. By now, we have heard from HCMC leadership, healthcare workers, physicians, community advocates, and most importantly, patients and providers. The recurring message is clear. HCMC is a premier level 1 trauma center that trains future generations of talented physicians. It is also our public safety net hospital that serves everyone, no matter where they come from or their ability to pay. Its loss would be detrimental to our state and the entire upper Midwest region. The stakes are high and lives are on the line. And it's not hyperbole to say that if we are not successful in passing legislation to save HCMC, Minnesotans will die. The loss of this regional asset would be a catastrophe for our healthcare system, especially in rural Minnesota. Because of the combination of federal cuts, uncompensated care, and the dissolution of UCare, HCMC has been barely staying above water and has begun ending services, cutting programs, and reducing beds just to continue to keep the lights on. And thankfully, we do have consensus at the legislature about this issue, and both sides, all of my colleagues, do want to make sure that there is a solution for HCMC, and we are doing those conversations right now. It is incumbent upon all of us to take an intergovernmental approach, from Minnesota to Washington, not only to save HCMC, but to ensure that our most vulnerable communities have access to health care. In the long term, the Minnesota legislature, we will be getting serious about addressing our broken healthcare system that too often serves the wealthiest at the expense of our most marginalized neighborhoods. But with a little over a week left in session, I and my colleagues will do everything that we can to make sure that we have a meaningful solution to save HCMC. And with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Representative Katie Jones.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Katie Jones. I'm a representative and had the honor of serving in House District 61A, which is this district that houses HCMC, as well as parts of Southwest and North Minneapolis. I've been monitoring how a number of these cruel federal cuts and the impacts of President Trump's H.R. 1 are impacting our #1 trauma center here in Minnesota. Nearly half of all medical doctors and healthcare workers are trained here. Our neighbors work here, and it's imperative that we save this community and regional asset. I support a sustainable solution for HCMC because of the patients, because of the workers, and because it serves all of our community. But for the patients, particularly for Waweru, who has contacted me multiple times because he is so concerned about the loss of this hospital and he depends on it. For people like my husband, when he slipped and fell on the ice and hit his head, this is where he came for his care, and I had faith that the doctors here, with their incredible equipment and their focus and expertise with head trauma, would make sure that he would get the best quality care. But also we need to talk about the critical professional staff, like Charlie, who cares for those with chemical addiction, knowing that these are challenging patients that are not accepted by all hospitals. Kaylee was a constituent of mine. She left me a voicemail talking about how she works in the nearby area at a clinic and how she's so worried that if this hospital closes, that her clinic will become overwhelmed with patients. For Mike, who cares for our little ones as a pediatrician, after a decade away, he wanted to move back. And the way he was able to convince his family to move back is because he got that position here. And he is a mission-driven man, and that's what is so wonderful about this hospital. And last but not least, for a constituent named Haley, who's a nurse. She loved working here, but because of the current uncertainty with this system, she was forced to look elsewhere. And that's what is so concerning right now. And that's why I'm working with colleagues like Representative Agbaje to find a solution that doesn't kick the can down the road and that gives stability to this hospital. Despite the challenges of a tied House, I'm encouraged that we have a bipartisan commitment to get this done. Republican House Speaker Lisa Dameth has also publicly stated that she's willing to help. We need a sustainable solution, and I've received so much support from my constituents about this. Thank you to everyone who's out there making their voices heard and standing up for our irreplaceable HCMC. We won't stop fighting until we save it. And now I have the honor of introducing County Commissioner Angela Connolly.
Thank you, Representative. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Conley, Hennepin County Commissioner for the 4th District. You are in the 4th District. It is a pleasure, a privilege to serve the area where this hospital resides. This hospital, our hospital, is more than a healthcare facility. It is a lifeline for residents in my district, providing critical care and support for families, seniors, and all vulnerable populations who depend on its services every single day. We are committed to serving everyone regardless of their background or circumstance, which has made our hospital a reliable institution for those facing health, social, and economic challenges. As a safety net hospital, Hennepin Healthcare serves everyone, regardless of the ability to pay. We're not asking people if they can pay when they head to our emergency room. This inclusive mission is central to its identity and to the trust that it has built in this community. I've been very vocal in the legislature about the urgent need for facility upgrades and resources. Investing in our hospital means investing in the people of my district and ensuring continued access to high-quality care and emergency services. I have heard countless stories from constituents about how the hospital has made a difference in their lives. These personal testimonies that people share highlight the real impact of our hospital and what it has in this community. For many residents, HCMC is more than a hospital. It is a lifeline. Constituents consistently share personal stories about how the providers right here have saved lives. They have shared personal stories about how the providers have supported their families and delivered compassionate care during the most difficult moments, the most difficult days of their lives. Maintaining a strong healthcare workforce. I'm going to say that again. Maintaining a strong healthcare workforce and supporting our hospital's role in training future professionals is vital to meeting the evolving needs of our community. HCMC is the only Level 1 trauma center in Minnesota that is also a public safety net hospital, the only one. So when someone arrives at HCMC, they aren't asked how they will pay, they are asked how our staff can help. Are they hurt? Where are they hurt? The hospital provides critical 24/7 emergency access, even for services that other systems do not staff during off hours, whether it's emergency dental surgery, I should know, or an urgent dermatology consult. HCMC ensures care is available when patients need it, not just during business hours. Our expertise in trauma and burn care are the #1 reason patients outside of Hennepin County utilize Hennepin Healthcare. HCMC offers unique life-saving services for the entire region, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Iowa, Wisconsin, including the only 24/7 emergency hyperbaric chamber between Milwaukee and Salt Lake City. Care that has proven essential for patients experiencing carbon monoxide poisoning and other emergencies. HCMC staff, from EMS responders to nurses and physicians, consistently show exceptional commitment during times of crisis, including care for the 10 patients that arrived here injured in the tragedy at Annunciation last summer. The hospital accepts patients from Minnesota. In 2025 alone, from all across Minnesota, in 2025 alone, Hennepin Healthcare received over 1,500 transfers from other healthcare systems in this state. It's an important statewide resource. Strengthening this hospital means strengthening the community. Investing in facilities, long-term sustainable investments in facilities, technology, and resources ensures continued access to emergency services and high-quality care for all Minnesotans. It's a pleasure right now for me to introduce Julie Graves, a good friend of mine, to share her story.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Graves. I'm a long-term Southside Minneapolis resident. I'm a youth worker. I'm a mom of 3. I'm a community worker. On August 1st, 2007, I was on a chartered school bus coming back from a water park with 53 kids, crossing the I-35 bridge over the Mississippi River when the bridge collapsed beneath us. 13 people lost their lives that day. 145 were injured, and I was one of them. As I was being loaded into an ambulance, I remember telling the driver, who was from out of town, she had just done a drop from rural Minnesota, and I said, take me to HCMC, only take me to HCMC. And this is a real Minneapolis story because my husband was sound checking on stage at First Avenue, and my colleagues had called him and said, here's what happened. We got the kids to safety, but Julie's getting taken down from the bridge, and come meet her. So he hopped in the ambulance with me. This was back before GPS. People just printed MapQuest. And he was helping this out-of-town, amazing ambulance driver who had no sense of, Minneapolis streets, get me to HCMC. We made it to HCMC, our level 1 trauma center. That fall broke my back, shattered my ankle. I broke several toes. That night is still a blur of doctors and nurses and specialists moving quickly and calmly around me. And I remember thinking 2 things. I couldn't believe that I was alive, and I couldn't believe that all the kids were okay. I knew I was hurt. I was in a lot of pain, but I knew I was going to survive. I spent more than a week in the ICU. I had a long stretch of surgeries and rehabilitation and recovery, both physical and mental. I still have hardware placed in my body. I had a back brace that I wore constantly. I moved into NAP, the rehabilitation center here, and eventually home to recover in my parents' house in a wheelchair. So the story was my fiance then, we were supposed to get married like 3 weeks after the bridge collapse. So we were planned to get married in August, and we still did. What was supposed to be a big wedding day, my friends rolled me in my wheelchair into my backyard in Powderhorn, South Minneapolis. And our good friend Antonio married us, so that day wouldn't be taken from us too. And I was in pain, but the joy carried me through. And in the years past, Hennepin Healthcare has remained part of my life and my journey. Physical therapy was truly life-changing. My physical therapist is here. He was at my wedding. And it helped me learn to trust my body again. I've had all 3 of my children here as well. The midwife program here is incredible, one of the oldest in the country. And my entire family still receives care here today at Hennepin Healthcare. And I live an active lifestyle now, mostly pain-free. I've got one little toe that, after all the pins came out, I say it's the pinky toe that can't keep up, but that's the only thing, and I've learned to live with that. And then 2 decades later, I'm still working at Pillsbury United Communities, a nonprofit serving the community. I'm now a senior director of Youth and Future Focus, which focuses on career exploration. And I have a lot of young people so passionate about medical careers. And guess what's the teaching hospital here in the Twin Cities that they want to be at? It's here. Yeah, and I, as somebody who works in community, I see this ecosystem and how foundational HCMC is to the entire Twin Cities and the entire state, to our health, to our workforce, to our communities, to each other. And knowing that this place exists for everyone, no matter their circumstances, it lets me breathe a little bit easier, and it's not optional, it's essential. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Julie, and we're so glad that you survived and got the care that you needed. And it is true that this place is foundational for so many of us. With that, we'll open up for questions.
There seems to be a consensus that the hospital should be saved, but not a consensus on exactly how to do that. How do you change that dynamic in a matter of days?
Yeah. Thank you for the question about how do we change the dynamic over at the legislature about how to save HCMC. I mean, the way legislation works is a lot of conversation. It's a lot of showing people data. It's a lot of sharing stories like Julie's stories to really get people to move, to understand not only the enormity of the situation, but also the enormity of the ask that we're being asked, and also what we need to give to HCMC to make sure it survives. So we are moving people along. We are moving towards, what a solution could look like. But I think, we're also wanting to balance it with all the other competing priorities that we have at the legislature, too.
And what happens if you reach the end of the session and there isn't an agreement?
I mean, I think, it would be catastrophic. It would be a tragedy. I don't get a sense of that from the legislature. I do think that we will be doing something when we unveil what that is. Probably will be at the 11th hour once everyone can get everything on a row and on a spreadsheet. So.
Any sense of what's holding some people back or preventing people from kind of getting on the same page with this?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that has been a little bit hard for people to kind of deal with is the size of the tax that has been asked for by Hennepin County. I know that has come up in conversation, but we have also been sharing the analysis and the data as to why a tax of some level is necessary in order to solve this issue as well. And then there have also been proposals that looked at general fund cash. So we're looking at ways to see if we can strike a balance between various revenue sources to get us through this.
Representative,
yes.
Before lawmakers vote on this bill, has anyone seen HCMC's budget? Does anyone know how these dollars will be spent and managed?
Yes, I mean, we do meet with members from the hospital and the county to get a better sense of the budget and the dollars, and so we have been continuing to ask for that data. We've seen some of that data, and those are the types of things we're digging in on. In addition, some of the proposals also show ways to ensure that Hennepin County and the hospital will, be run in a way that we can be alerted much more quickly when things are happening, so that way everyone who is a stakeholder in the hospital will have that information and that transparency going forward.
Can you speak to removing North Memorial from this and receiving any revenue? I mean, they're in a tight position just like HCMC.
Right. So the question was about North Memorial. One of the proposals that was introduced today would just have North Memorial, similar to other hospitals in the state, be able to apply for an uncompensated care fund that would be open to all hospitals in the state. We really wanted to focus on the acuteness of HCMC. I've heard from folks that HCMC is essentially a pillar to our hospital system, and if that were to go down, many other hospitals would soon be facing lots of constraints if that were to happen. So that proposal is really to kind of show and highlight the need to keep HCMC afloat, as well as providing another resource for other hospitals like North Memorial.
You spoke a little bit about this, but can you talk a little bit more sort of about the governance of HCMC moving forward to, again, just ensure that either we don't get in this position again or that some of the finances are taken care of?
Yeah, I'll have Commissioner Conley follow up with this, but what we've proposed at the legislature in a couple different proposals, both Representative Nadeau and I have shown ways to make sure that the hospital moves quickly back to a professional board, that it is doing much more reporting, and that also that the hospital has the ability to work on its needs as it needs to. And then we also have proposed a task force to help with the longevity of the hospital. And I'll leave it to Commissioner.
Absolutely, and so governance is a big issue. When we took over operational oversight of the hospital last year, no commissioner, and there's 7 of us, wanted to maintain that oversight. So we had a briefing last week that laid out a timeline from county administration that really showed us by the end of the year we could have a new corporate board there. So Hennepin Healthcare is a subsidiary corporation of the county. We want to make sure that it has a sustainable board going forward, and we have a timeline to make that happen, soonest starting in June and ending with a board possibly by the end of this year.
And would you have more medical experts on that board rather than?
I mean, I think the makeup of the board really is embedded in statute, but it's certainly something that we would be willing and happy to work with the state legislature to be able to do, is what the makeup of that board should look like. In statute, there's 2 commissioners on it, the way that it was designed before, but that could look very different by the end of the year. With that, thank you, everyone. All right. Thank you.
All right, you were just hearing from Representative Ilhan Omar, U.S. Congresswoman, as well as several other local and state representatives holding a press conference at Hennepin Healthcare, promising a meaningful solution to saving the hospital, which has indicated if they do not get some relief, the hospital, a safety net hospital, will have to close by this summer. The officials there obviously were on the side of funding the hospital. It has been a controversial topic because while there is consensus on the need to step in and save this hospital, there is not consensus on how to do it and what that solution may be. But these individuals pushing for a solution that everybody can agree on, Representative Ilhan Omar